Every farm has a story. When it comes to dairy farming, these stories are often only heard by the animals raised, the land stewarded, and the family that makes it all possible. Join me, Dairy Gal Val, as I interview individuals from across the dairy industry, both within the United States and across the globe, discussing topics like farm management, the food industry, ag business and technology, and most importantly, their farm story. This is the Dairy Hour podcast.
Well, and do you publish the video too, or do you just do the audio for your stuff?
Oh, I do both.
Both. Okay.
So,
Let me get a little screen out of the way.
hello and welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour podcast. I'm your host, Val Levine, or Dairy Gal Val. And I am here today with Peggy Coffeen from Uplevel Dairy Podcast as well. Just a quick note, this episode is brought to you by Supervisor Systems. Check out their amazing and user-friendly Feed Supervisor, Truck Supervisor, and Hoof Supervisor systems. They are designed to help keep profit on the farm and in the farmer's pocket through feeding precision and superior hoof record keeping. Check them out on supervisorsystems.com or find them on Instagram and Facebook. Peggy, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Val. How are you?
I'm very good. I don't know. We always just seem to keep missing each other places. So I'm excited to get a chance to sit down and chat with you. I've gotten to listen to your podcast a little bit as well, and I look forward to a fun conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've enjoyed listening to yours too. And you have talked with a lot of mutual friends and also introduced me to people via podcasting that I didn't know that are awesome movers and shakers in the dairy world. So kudos to you for the efforts that you put out to tell those stories.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it's funny how we just seem to keep passing each other and not ever getting to connect. So nothing like getting the job done on a podcast. So
That is the
um,
truth.
definitely. Let's hop in. I don't know. Do you want to just kind of give an overview of, what you currently do, where you're from, that kind of thing?
Sure, I'll give you the snapshot and then I will let you prod and poke into this into it as much as you'd like. And so yeah, so Peggy Coffeen, I host the Uplevel Dairy podcast, and it was actually something that I founded and started over a year ago. And I live just outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin. So my heart has always been in the dairy industry, and I grew up in a little red barn just south of Madison milking cows, and as I always put it, driving tractors not very well. So that kind of got that boots on the ground, like I think one of the greatest blessings that can sometimes be a curse with growing up on a small farm is that you learn how to do a little bit of everything. And it's great because as an adult, you know how to do a little bit of everything. Like I can kind of drive a tractor, I can kind of back up a trailer, but become the master of all trades, right? So you kind of learn a lot of different skills, and I think that that pertains to everything else that you step into as an adult, and just kind of having that boots on the ground, like get your hands dirty and figure things out mentality, and that's what I gained growing up, in that little red barn, milking cows with my mom and dad on our little farm, and that's also what really just put this desire in my heart to want to make a career out of making the dairy industry a better place and doing it through it adding value to people. And it's funny, Val, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, do you ever remember back to things that you maybe wrote or said when you were a teenager on a college application or a scholarship application? Like, do you remember the stuff that you used to write, like the big question of what do you want to do, or what's the difference that you want to make in the world, and what your 18-year-old self would have said? Like, do you remember those questions, that like how you would answer them back then?
Yeah, mine got pretty solidified by the time I was headed to college. I kind of had a pretty good idea on what I wanted to do. I did get off track for a little after college, working on a different farm and then working as a milk inspector. But I think the end goal always was for me to come back to the farm. But right around 13, though, all I wanted to do was be a veterinarian. I just wanted to be a veterinarian. And there was this old well, he's still around, but there's this older vet in my area. And I was just like, I want to be just like him. I want to be just like him. And then vet school started to not look as fun. So I was like, man, I think I want to go back to the farm. Never mind.
Isn't it funny? I think so many of us that grew up in on farms in the day when there was like the classic typical country vet, it was almost like the James Harriet, right? That would drive around and pull into the farm and like he was like second to God because he was the most intelligent, most educated person you ever had met, at least for me, I had ever met in my life. Doc Elkins was the one, and then Doc Carlin was the next one that used to come out to our little farm just outside of Monticello. And I think as a kid, you just sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, he's so smart. Look at all the stuff he knows how to do. And then I would say, as I got older, we actually had a female vet, Dr. Jessica, and she became a whole new type of role model, right? Of watching her as a woman in that field. But sitting alongside those conversations and those appointments, and I think it's all of those things that, for one, say, wow, there's so much to dairy that's so interesting and so in depth. But I also kind of really came to know that my place in the industry was really drawn to being on the communication side. And I was always a writer, always, enjoyed giving speeches. Like, when they had those speaking contests, I was like, oh, to
Yep.
do that, right? So that's kind of where I came from in my upbringing, and going back to I remember writing out this scholarship application where it's like, what do you want to do? Like what do you want to do with what you're doing? And I remember writing down these words: I want to help farmers and farm families keep farming. And as much as you could take those words and you can make them mean a lot of different things, I think that heart and core of what was deep inside of me at 18 years old or 16 years old, whatever it was, I would have written those words. It's never changed. The how has changed and the methods have changed, but the why of I remember staring out the barn window. We had this little wooden door that looked out across the field. And we lived in this beautiful little valley in southern Wisconsin. If you know southern Wisconsin, it's hill country. And we lived in the valley. And there would always be this time on a summer evening where the sun would hit just right as it was setting, and everything in the valley would glow. And I would just remember looking out the window and saying, I hope everyone has this. I hope every person has this in their life in some way. And I think it's all those little dots, that you connect that create the path that you find. And so it was all those little dots that really set me, on a career in agriculture journalism, which was my major at Madison, where I went to school at UW, and then really just on this path into continuing and on to communications. And so I spent a lot of my career as a dairy magazine or newspaper editor. And then I guess a year and a half ago, I embarked on my own path to do it in the way that I just really, really felt called to serve the industry. And so at Up Level Dairy, that's where that came from. And that's what I do with the podcast.
And that's inspiring that you were able to find a way to do it your own way. You've always been connected to the industry in your own special way, but to find your own calling and be able to move over into podcasting and doing your own thing is always very important. I just get to do it on the side of dairy farming and all the other things that I get to do. And going back to when you say the way the sun hits the valley, we get that at our farm. We're down in a valley next to the river, and the
Yeah.
sun will hit the rail, like we have a railroad trestle that we can see that goes across the river, and the sun will hit right over there, and there's a lot of maple trees, and it really, especially in fall when the trees are like, the reds and yellows, it just glows, and it's quite cool to see. And I definitely
Yeah.
agree that everyone should get to see that at some point in their life. So you say you did a lot of things on the farm growing up. What were some of your favorite childhood memories of, like, what were your favorite chores and whatnot when you were a kid?
Oh my goodness. So Val, this is fun because like these are things that nobody ever asks. And I'm either gonna gain or lose credibility with my responses. So number one is I was extremely passionate about the cat department.
That's important when you're a kid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, like, named every cat, snuck them in the house, brought them to school. I remember taking, a cat in a cage on the bus to school one
Oh
day
my
for
gosh.
yeah, because mom and dad had to milk, so they couldn't take the cat in for me, so I had to take it on the bus. But but cat I was definitely really passionate about cats, which is totally irrelevant because to anything else. But it's so funny because my third grader now, like, I don't even want him to know how much he is like me. Like, he just loves cats, writes poems about cats, writes stories about cats. I'm like, oh my gosh, he is me. This is embarrassing. And now I just told you. And people
And
that like to
everybody else.
listen to you about my childhood passion for cats that I've been subduing for a very long time.
I mean,
But I love
cats,
love the
cows,
cat.
same thing.
Yeah, right. But I really loved milking, and I think there's like there's a nostalgia about milking in a tie stall barn that, like, when I think back, I only remember the fun parts, right? Like, I don't really remember getting hit in the face with a dirty switch. I try to block that. I don't like to remember getting kicked in the knee and bruising my kneecap the week before the state cross country tournament. Like, you know, I
Yep.
don't like to remember those things, but what I love to remember is even from being like as soon as I could walk. Like, we grew up in a playpen in the back of the barn, right? So, like, as soon as I could walk and start to do stuff, we used to have like oh gosh, this is going to sound so old school, but we'd actually have, like, buckets to wash teats before we dipped and prepped and all of that. And I just remember, like, that was kind of my way of getting started, and being part of the chores was I would, bring the towels and dry towels and wet towels to my mom and dad while we were milking. And then when I was in about 4th grade, we had 6 Bomatic units. And when I was in 4th grade, my parents bought me my own.
Ooh.
And so I had, like, my own, like, secondhand milking unit. And I was just like, I'm like, this is the best day of my life because I now have my own milking unit, right? And so that became, and what I loved about it, for one, was it was this time, with mom and dad. Um, and I loved Sunday mornings, like, from being a kid all the way up until I was a teenager, because, like, that's when the local radio station, because, you got like 5 radio stations in the barn, and the local radio station played classic country every Sunday
Yes,
morning.
I
So
remember that too.
you too?
Oh my
Okay.
gosh,
Yes.
yes,
So
that's like the best
yes,
thing. I
best
still get
thing. It's
excited when they do that on Sunday mornings. Are you kidding me? I'll be
I
going to a barrel
know.
race or something and I turn it on and I'm like, yes, the good country.
The Good Country, right? It was like Conway Twitty and, like, Merle Haggard, and those were my jams.
Yes, I'm completely there with you. I remember Sunday mornings in the barn listening to classic country, definitely.
Yes, and those are, and that's what makes you who you are, right? It's like those memories. But here's the other thing that milking did for me, and I didn't realize it at the time, but for me, like, as a creative person, I get my best creativity when I'm doing something. Like, it's almost like when I move my body, my mind is in an entirely different place, and it's in a spot that it can get really creative. And so, like, I used to do all these speeches and stuff, right? And I would always write them while I was milking. Like, it was like what I had to do. It was the prereq. I'm like, if I have to write a speech, I have to do it while I'm milking. Like, I can't just sit at a desk. I can't just do it at school. Like, I need to be milking. I need to be doing that movement, almost like a repetitive thing. But it was that whole setting, that whole environment of it, just being with the cows, and being kind of one with that lifestyle, that just kind of helped me access that part of my brain that I needed to be creative. And so I think it's all of that I really look back on, growing up, like I said, quite humbly milking 50 cows in a tie stall barn. And Val, what I wish that that could be a sustainable, way of life. Like, if it
Agreed.
was, my husband and I would have 50 cows in the backyard. No doubt about it, right?
Yep,
If it was still that way. But I found different ways to serve and different ways to tap into that creativity to do what I knew was on my heart too, and that was to be able to just find ways for other people to get those type of experiences in a
Yes.
modern dairy world and to try to help them along the way.
Yes. So I grew up in a Thai stall, and then around the year 2000, we actually bought the farm that we are at now, which does have a it's a small parlor. But I grew up doing like Dairy Princess things and 4-H speeches, things like that. And do you know where my mom and I worked on them? In the milking parlor. Uh, Morning
Oh,
milkings. You always do your best thinking in the morning milkings. And yeah, I still to this day I'm also a I have to be doing something while I think. Usually my best ideas come while I'm driving and I can't write them down, which creates fun issues. And then I'm like, okay, I gotta remember this, and this for when I stop again. I need to write these down. Like, or I'll actually pull over and like scribble notes because I'm like, all right, I can't forget this. I need to write it down. But yeah, I'm
yeah.
definitely a multitasker when it comes to thinking. Or even when I go to meetings and stuff, I'm constantly scribbling down notes to myself because my brain can't just focus on one thing. I have to focus on two things at once, and that's that's how I get my creativity and ideas. So I guess it works for
Yeah.
me. So
I love it. I love it. Totally get it. Yep. Yep. It's that. And for me, it's running too. Like, cause
okay.
since we don't, we have a small hobby farm, but I cannot, act like I work nearly as hard as you or anybody else that's taking care of cows every day. So I got to find a different way to get my energy out. And so running is that for me, and working out is the way that I do it. Cause,
Yep.
yeah, cause otherwise, like, it's how I process, it's how I center. And I think that I think no matter what you're doing, there's a certain amount of clarity you get when you do something that pushes you so hard physically that you can't breathe.
I 100% agree with that because while I also do farm, when I'm home, I regularly go to a gym, and it's like a
Yeah.
boot camp style gym, and I get my butt handed to me. And then I'm like, I can be so much more productive by spending, it's a 45-minute class, but it's 20-minute drive. So, you're talking an hour and a half, almost 2 hours start that I'm kind of taking out of my mid morning, but I'm so much more productive in those hours after the gym than I am if I don't go to the gym at all. So I completely get that. It definitely helps you like unwind, refocus, and it's funny how much you expend so much energy, but it almost re-energizes you all at the same time.
Oh,
So
absolutely. I'm with you 100%, Val.
yes, but I am not the type that'll just go out and go for a run. I think on the previous episode to this with Emma and Kelsey, um, we definitely talked a lot about that and running. I ran a lot in high school and middle school, and am not much of a runner anymore. So
And that's okay because you're running in a whole different way.
yes, I run after kids. I run after cows. Yeah, get my running in other get my running
You
in
sure
other
do.
ways. To put my running shoes on and go for a couple mile run is not my forte.
Yep,
So
you're a different stage and different priorities right now, but you're still getting it
yes,
done, and your running is now just a different type of running.
yes. So I guess let's refocus on maybe so you talked about how you and your husband have a hobby farm. If you want to chat a little bit about that and maybe how you met your husband, what he does, that kind of thing.
Sure, you'll love this story. So, okay, so when I was in college, I remember proclaiming to my roommates, I will meet the man I'm going to marry at the World Dairy Expo, right?
A
And
Wisconsin
so
girl's dream.
exactly, right? Like this is what there's two things a Wisconsin the three things a Wisconsin girl dreams of. One is being a dairy princess, right? Two is meeting the man of your dreams at World Dairy Expo. And three is the wedding photo with the cows,
Yes.
right? Like it is a thing. It is a thing. And and so those are my three dreams, right? Like as a kid, or as a teenager, early 20s, whatever. And so as fate would have it, I was in my senior year of college at Madison, and because Madison is right, campus is right by World Dairy Expo. I did a lot of stuff, and I was in a lot of different clubs and whatever, right? So I'm like doing all this stuff at Expo, and one of the things that I was doing these surveys. It was for, I think it was for Dairy Herd Management or Dairy Today or something like that at the time. And so they're like, okay, we need you to do these surveys, and you got to ask farmers. Like you start with how many cows they have, and then you ask them this whole list of questions, and I was like, well, this sounds like a great way to meet my future husband. And so, sure enough, hook, line, and sinker, doesn't this good looking guy just walk on up and take this survey? And he told me, I was like, this is, as much as it was a survey for this magazine, really, I was like, this is the perfect future husband evaluation survey, because the first question is, how many cows does he have? And
What you got for
so,
cows?
yes, I'm like, how many cows do you have? How many acres do you own? And so he tells me he's got like 53 cows. And I was like, perfect. And he like just kept checking all of the survey boxes, which were essentially also my boxes, going down this list, right? And so, funny story, he actually lied. I found out later.
Oh
He only had one cow.
no. The nerve.
But by that point, I was already in love, and the rest is history. That was 17 years ago at World Dairy Expo in the
Wow.
entrance of the exhibition hall. And so what that unfolded to was, so we have four kids, and we like when we got together, his family was really involved in showing red and white Holsteins, and like they were like super, like the one cow he owned had been the junior champion, supreme show champion of the junior show.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, fine, if you're only going to have one cow,
I
i
guess
guess
it's a
that's
supreme champion, so it's
I
okay.
guess I can work with that.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so but he actually he had pursued a career in agriculture lending, so
Okay.
that's been his career and his passion for a long, long time now. And so he came from this, this herd and family that did a lot of showing. I came from one that, I was super into junior Holsteins and Dairy Bowl and all that, but I just never was at that level of showing beyond the county fair. And believe me, if I got a high red at the state fair, I was tickled, right?
She's
So,
like, yes, it
uh,
wasn't last.
yeah, that's exactly what I would say. And so when we got together, we really just enjoyed the fact that we had this passion, for dairy. And so we had a little farm and we raised some cattle together. And our older kids, who are now 21 and 24, yeah, they're grown up, they're amazing. So we started showing, with them. And then we have two little boys now that are 6 and 8. And so we're like just getting back into the thick of it. But we have this little hobby farm outside of De Pere, Wisconsin. And originally it was for, raising these show animals. And so we did that and ran that circuit pretty hard, when our older kids were showing age, and had a lot of fun with that. And then we have the small acreage. And so we actually, a couple of years ago, when Wisconsin opened up the license or the program for growing industrial hemp for
Okay.
CBD, my husband came home and he is like, we're going to grow hemp. And I was like, that sounds like a terrible idea. And I think we're going to have to go to jail if we do that, because I think that's illegal. And so anyway, so as it typically goes, when he has a big idea, I'm opposed to it. And before you know it, I'm hand planting 850 plants in our
Oh
backyard.
no.
And so our little farm in the backyard, that's where, we raise cattle, but then also we're growing this hemp. And the idea originally was we were going to cash crop it. But I remember, looking out at the field, and I'm just like, there's something more for us here. And so I actually started my first business about 4 or 5 years ago, taking our hemp from our farm and turning that into locally handcrafted wellness products. And so I was doing that while I was, a magazine editor. That was kind of my, like, this extra fun, creative learning, thing that I was doing, that related to something that we could grow right in our own backyard on our little farm, and really, grew to love that. And so yeah, so now our farm, I don't grow as much hemp right now because we have a really good stock from the last few years, and it's an extremely prolific plant. So I still grow just a tiny little bit, and we still have cattle, and this next year it's going to be getting back into game time with showing because our 8-year-old turns 9 very soon here, and you know what that means?
Show
It means it's
season.
time for yes, yes. And so we're gearing up for that come the spring that we'll be starting the show circuit with our second batch of kids.
Now,
But
will
yeah,
he be
that's
doing red and whites?
well, probably because what Kevin and I have done over the years, and I say I give Kevin more credit because he's super into the genetics and more than I am. But we've taken a lot of the red genetics that his family had, and we had taken a few cows out of my family farm before my parents sold a couple years ago, and have really just fostered those bloodlines. So anything that we have under our prefix, which is Overland Acres, either goes back to their foundation cow, whose name is Glamour Shot, or a foundation cow from my family, and so everything goes back to those two animals, and we've been able to breed red into the black and white bloodline that my family had, and that's what our little boys will get to show.
Very cool. So they're historical cows.
They are.
And do you guys keep them and like send them to a neighbor to milk, or are you selling them off as heifers before they calve in, or what are your
Yeah, so we have a good friend that takes our cows, and he actually has a really beautiful freestyle barn, and they just really thrive in that barn, alongside his cows, and he actually had purchased a lot of cows from my husband's family herd when they had sold like 20 years ago now. So it just was kind of this cool connection and tie that we've
yeah,
become really good friends, and really, they've supported us and we've supported them and their kids, as they have gotten into showing too. But that's where our cows go, and they just really do well there. But I will tell you that a few years ago, you'll love this story, Val. A few years ago, we had a cow that we milked in our backyard, and for like 3 months because she had calved, and we're like, okay, like we want to get her ready for expo. And of course, as timing would have it, I'm like super pregnant. And I've worked from home for like 15 years. So like who's going to milk the cow, right? And 3 times a day we were milking her to get her, really flushed out and get her ready for showing. And so so I was joking. I'm like, yeah, it was a summer I spent like barefoot, pregnant, and milking a cow in the backyard. Like we were
not
like
in the kitchen,
homesteaders.
but milking the cow.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. And like in the backyard, barefoot, pregnant, and milking a cow. And so that did not last super long. But I
So
can say, been there, done that, milked a
not doing it
cow.
again. Yes.
No.
So I'm getting the feeling that your husband is the big idea one, and then he like, here, honey, here you go, take care of this. Am I
Well,
accurate?
so he has his big ideas, but then I have mine.
Ah, so you're
You
equally
know,
matched
you
on that.
you get this, don't you? You get this.
I'm definitely the one with the big ideas, and my poor husband is just like, okay, like, sure. This is, I've been traveling for 2 months just to, oh my gosh, there's been an insane amount of meetings.
Yeah.
And I've been kind of scoping out for a new horse. And in between the meetings, I was like, I really like this horse in Western Kentucky. And he's like, well, can we have someone like haul it here for you? And I was like, I don't know. I can do it way cheaper. And he's just looking at me like, I know where this is going. This is not good. Well, he was actually getting ready to leave for his hunting trip. So I convinced one of my good friends to go with me, and 16 hours to where this horse was. And so we hopped in the truck one early Friday morning, and she drove for 2 hours before she actually works online. I have an internet air card. She worked
Oh,
in the truck while I
perfect.
drove. We drove 16 hours out to Kentucky. And actually, she's actually from 2 hours from there. So her dad was cool and came and met us for dinner or whatever. Well, the next morning we go pick up the horse. And actually, we ended up dropping him off at a colt starter on the way back, but it was, another, God only knows how many hours the second day was. But, anyways, it was 36 hours of driving in 48 hours,
Oh my
2,200
gosh.
miles.
Oh,
I got, so I got home, and it was actually the night that the time changed back. I got home the second 2 o'clock that morning. And then my husband got up to leave on his hunting trip an hour later. But he just tolerates my nonsense. He's great. Um, I'm the one
as
with
long
the
as he
ideas.
gets to go hunting, like that's right. Is
Yeah.
that how it works for you guys?
Well,
Because
he
that's
goes,
how it is in my house.
this is the one thing I want to do. Like, please just let me do that. So I try very hard to make sure that he gets to do what he wants to do because it's very rare that he gets to do what he wants to do. But we made it work. But any crazy ideas, he'll just kind of look at me, make sure I'm like real serious. All right. And he makes it happen. If it's something on his end, he always, yeah, he'll just do it. It's like that meme, like, honey, I'm bringing home a shark. All right, I'll get building the aquarium. Like, that's just, yeah. I got lucky because I'm a big dreamer and a go, go, go. And he's just like, okay, sure.
Yep. Hey, and that's the balance, right?
Oh, it's very
That's why it
heavily
works.
balanced. On the teeter totter really tries to go towards my side a lot, but he does push back a little bit and keeps me level, if that makes sense. So,
Oh, absolutely. I get that. I get that. And
but
I know with, even with Kevin too, sometimes he's got to bring me back down a
yes,
little bit from some of my like we both get like big ideas, but they're just in different areas now.
yeah.
Like so he's definitely kind of like your husband. My husband loves to hunt and he has just been on he was elk hunting in Colorado right
Oh,
after
yep.
Expo and then bow hunting and then gun season Wisconsin starts this weekend. So he had
So does
already
ours.
left.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you too. So he's already gone for that. But it was funny because he got a really pretty nice buck with the bow
Oh, good.
around Halloween weekend. And that meant that he was actually around for the last 3 weeks. And I'm like,
What do I do with
I
this?
I love you, sweetheart, but why are you here? Like
Yes.
this is my time when me and the boys just do what like we just kind of do our own thing. We got our own routine. This is actually what it is, Val. You know what it is? It is when he is gone and I start cleaning out the closets full of stuff that he doesn't know I threw away. And so I'm
Uh,
like,
See, now he's
why
gonna
are you?
listen to this and you're in trouble.
He won't listen. He won't listen. He still is like, because I've been doing podcasting for a long time, right? Because I
Yeah.
used to do the Progressive Dairy podcast too. And my husband, God bless him, I love him so much. He's just not a podcast guy.
Yeah.
He's like, you got to make it easier for people to listen to it. And I'm
You
like,
click a button, it's not hard.
right, right.
And actually,
So
yeah,
yeah.
Greg
So
got me
anyway,
podcast or Greg is the one that got me listening to podcasts. So
really,
yeah, he prefers to listen to podcasts when he's because we have a couple big trucks on the road and
oh
when
sure.
he's on a trip or whatever, he'll listen to some podcasts and whatnot. Um, so he does that. And I haven't checked in with him recently, but normally he stays pretty up to date on my podcast. I think he likes to know what I say about him on here. So I always
Well,
try to be very nice. No,
yes, yes. Well, he can be very proud because you have a lot of nice things to say about your hubby, and
I try.
yeah, I think we're both pretty lucky, aren't we?
We very much got lucky. So I guess let's switch and just get into some fun fun questions. This is my favorite part of the podcast is just rapid fire questions. So let's see. Favorite pizza topping besides cheese because that should be number one all the time. So I guess
That
second.
is number one. I do like ham and pineapple.
Oh
Hmm.
yes, you're a Hawaiian girl like I am.
Yes.
I love that, but I've really been getting into the white pizza with the garlic and the broccoli.
Ooh, yum. That sounds
You don't
good.
have that in Wisconsin?
Probably somewhere, but I have a
Um,
household of very plain eaters, so my palate has become much more pared
oh
down.
no. That's disappointing. Well, if you ever find white pizza with just broccoli, it's just called a white broccoli pizza, but it's usually got a lot
Okay.
of garlic in it too. They're really good.
Oh, and it's like you get a whole vegetable food group. I'm all in.
I mean, you're quote unquote eating your broccoli, so it's good.
Right?
So,
Thanks for the tip.
yes, if you let's see, your go-to cut of beef.
Ooh. Okay. So I do enjoy, steaks and all that, but I my favorite cut to like cook up is actually just like a round steak. Because I know like some people think it's like a crappy cut or like, because it's maybe not as tender or whatever, but I just find that it's such a versatile thing to like throw in the crock pot or to like just sear,
Yep,
and do stuff with. And I don't I just actually really enjoy the versatility of what I can do with a round steak. Or just cubed with just butter, salt and pepper in the crock
yep,
pot. Like, and
that would be good. Yeah.
so
Um,
yeah, simple girl.
do you ever do grilling? Is it you that grills or is it your husband that grills?
I'm more of a smoker.
Oh,
So
there you go.
smoker, not a toker, a smoker. Like
Yes.
I know I said I grow hemp, but not that kind.
No, not with
So
that one.
yeah, so I love to smoke meat actually.
Yep.
So I'll do like I'll use up our roasts and stuff for that because that just seems to be the way that my family will eat it best. Because I think do you get the trend here? Like any food
Yeah.
choice in our house is based on what everyone else will eat and what I can tolerate. So
That's totally not fair.
it's all right. It's all right. What they don't know, actually they do know, is where I keep my secret stashes of chocolate.
Oh, yeah. I hide mine. And the other day I caught my girls in there. And I'm like, I don't know what you think you're doing. And they just both looked at me and I was like, yeah, I'll break your fingers. Get out of my chocolate. I buy the good stuff for you, for me. You get the normal stuff. Like, get out of here.
Right. Yep. I hear ya.
Yeah. They're like, but we really like these Lindt chocolates. I was like, yeah, but they're
Yeah.
expensive and they're mine. Get out.
Sometimes
Yes.
as a mom, you need just one finer thing that
Yeah.
is just yours.
It's my Lindt chocolate, darn it. Get out of there. Yes. Oh gosh. You are on the road. You're gonna stop for fast food. Where are you going and what's your order?
Oh gosh. Okay, so I'm not a fast food person.
Oh,
So
come on.
yeah, but I don't go anywhere. So that's why. 'Cause like I said, I've home officed for so long. Like,
I know
but
if you were out
if
with the
I get
boys,
what's that?
if you were out with the boys, you got to stop for lunch.
Oh man. This is probably this shouldn't
Oh,
be such a
jeez.
hard question. But you know what? Okay, so this is my guilty pleasure. Every once in a while, I will enjoy like just about anything from Taco Bell.
Oh, they're very good supporters of the dairy industry, so I'll
They
allow that answer.
they are, and they have some like good high protein options and things like that. And I'm like, well, even though it's probably still not super healthy, I'm going to convince myself that it's good for the farmers and somewhat good for
Yes.
me.
They have some like grilled cheese burrito or something. I have to go try it. I'm not a big
Ooh,
Taco Bell eater, but they keep talking about this like grilled cheese burrito that uses like a large amount of cheese. And I was like,
oh yes,
I
I
should
heard about
probably
this
go
too.
try that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what's your favorite? What's your fast food? Where did
I'm
you
very
stop
dis
on the horse trip? The
I'm very
36-hour road trip.
do you know where I stopped? Because you're lucky over in the Midwest, the first place that I stopped, Culver's.
Oh,
I am a Culver's fanatic and we don't have them around here. So if I'm
oh
ever
yeah.
anywheres where there's a Culver's, I will do some shady things for a Culver's. So pulled the horse
Love
trailer
it.
in there, parked, and enjoyed my butter burger and my
And
let's
some
see, I think
custard.
I got a concrete mixer the last
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you know what? Now that you say this, I take it back. So
Yeah,
my
see,
favorite fast food is actually like the catch-all of Quick Trip, which is I don't know if you've been to a Quick Trip, but maybe when
I've
you're in
heard lots
Madison.
about it.
Yeah. So that actually I would say for our family, Quick Trip probably takes the place of fast food. So I
Okay.
say I don't eat fast food much, but I definitely frequent Quick Trip a lot more.
Amber,
And because you can get your gas, but then they have fresh like fruits and vegetables
yep.
and and then not so healthy stuff that I
Yes.
also enjoy sometimes, but they also always have Ellsworth cheese curds.
Ah, yes. Ellsworth cheese curds are delicious.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I would do I would drive an extra 20 miles out of the way for cheese curds. So there you have it. That's the truth right there.
Amber Bristow and Becca Hilby would be so proud of you for saying Quick Trip because I know that they talk all the time about how much they love Quick Trips. So
It's the
yes,
real deal.
we have like Cumberland Farms around here, which are kind of like that, and we have Stewart's, which is a New York ice cream and milk. They have milk and ice cream, and it's like a gas station, but so that's like our local thing, but it's not my favorite. If I go to Pennsylvania, it's always Sheets. So
Oh, I've heard of Sheets. I've heard of
Sheets
it.
has very good cheese curds, as does Culver's. So actually, when I went on my trip, we ate Culver's on the way down, and of course, I got cheese curds to go with my Butterburger because you have to get
'Cause
cheese curds.
yeah,
And on the way back, we ate at Sheets, and I also had cheese curds the next day too. We don't have a lot of cheese curds around here. You got to do what you got to do, you know.
that's right. That's right. And there's fewer and fewer in Wisconsin because, like, back where, so the little area where I grew up, we had in my county 13 cheese factories when I was a kid.
Yep.
Like, there's a like cheese factory on every corner, and many of them you could walk into, and there was literally some guy with no gloves and a hairy arm that could like just take a
Scoop you out some
handful and
cheese
put it
curds.
on. And you're like, these were the most delicious, freshest, saltiest, potentially hairiest things you've ever had.
Yes. Don't mind that hair. Just pick it off. It's fine. It's pasteurized. It's good. Yep. I feel you on that one. Um, all right, I'm gonna find one more. Let's see. So you say you're a homebody. I'm hoping
Well,
that
I'm not a homebody. I just work from home.
well, you told me you didn't go far because you didn't eat fast food. So your favorite vacation you've ever been on. And it cannot be
Ooh.
World Dairy Expo. We know that's a given for a good one.
Okay, so typically my travels revolve around work. But my husband and I have been challenging ourselves to like actually learn how to vacation and go on trips. And so last summer, I had planned a trip for us, a road trip, which, okay, when I say road trip, this is like a big deal because we grew up on a very small farm. So we like a road trip when I was a kid was like no more than 2.5 hours because that's as far as you could get in a day and get home in between chores. So I had this brilliant idea that we should take our youngest boys who are still home with us. Our big kids are like, they were off working and everything else. And so I said, okay, I want to see where you go elk hunting in Colorado. And I want the boys to see it. And when you go, I want to know what it's like where you're at. And so this sounded like a really beautiful idea, right?
Uh-oh.
So what I didn't do is actually search to see how far the drive was. 20 hours one way.
Yep.
So like first family road trip, 20 hours one way, 20 hours back. And 10 of the 20 hours was completely through the mountains of Colorado to get down to Southwest Colorado, way southwest, down by a little town called Dolores. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Like it was just so beautiful. It was just, like so I've never been in the mountains like that. And we
Mhm.
stayed at a little campground where my husband near where my husband elk hunts. And so it was really cool because we like when he went back this fall and we were talking with him while he was, away, we were like, oh, well, we know what we can envision what it was like where you're at. We can envision, we can see it in our minds, the experience, that you're having because
Yeah.
we've been there. And to me, that was really cool and fulfilling. And we made, great family memories of just exploring new things and doing new things. And I will say, I will admit that I had this beautiful, like image in my mind of like what a family road trip was going to be like,
It was not
where I'm
like
like,
that.
not quite, because in my mind it was we are gonna play 20 hours of getting to know each other better questions, and I'm gonna ask you guys questions all the time. And that lasted for about 5 minutes before my husband like gave me the look that if you keep this up,
Shut
I'm
up.
pulling this truck over and we're going home.
It's the look of, would you shut up for 5 minutes? Yes. I know those. My
You
husband
know
does
that?
that to me too. Yes. And I always think it's fun, like when Greg and well, what we do when we go on long road trips, we'll actually drive through the night so the kids will sleep in the car.
Mm,
And it is my duty as passenger princess to keep my husband awake, even though he's just fine. So I'm a very bad singer, but I sing to him, I serenade him when like the 90s pop comes on, which he absolutely despises. I sing it as loud as I possibly can to him, complete with like hand gestures of serenading and all the fun
Oh
things.
yeah.
And I
You're
get
doing the Macarena. You're doing
yeah, I get the eye roll. Oh, it's like the Backstreet Boys and In Sync. Like, oh, he was just like,
yes.
he puts his hand on his head and he's just like, I can't with you. Like, can you please just calm down? How is one person so excited in the middle of the night on the road? We have no idea where we are. Like, just shut up.
And you're like, I'm doing my job. This is what you
Yeah.
asked me. I'm doing it. Right.
He'll say he didn't ask me to do it. I just volunteered. So I do it myself. Oh gosh, but yeah, sometimes he just looks at me. He's like, "Would you calm down?" Like, my gosh. Yep, it's good. It's amazing what
Oh,
a
I
little
love it.
late night caffeine will do for you. Just wakes you right up. It does.
There
So,
you go. There you go.
so
Just
what?
stops at the quick trip and the sheets and everything else along the
Yeah,
way.
what kind of vacations do you have coming? Are you planning anything? Or if you could visit any country in the world, where would you go?
Yeah, well, we were just kind of starting to talk about what we wanted to plan for a trip, with our family for this next year. So I don't know what that's going to be yet, but because we have kids that are, 6 and 8, and then in their early 20s, we try to find something like once a year that we can do with all of them. So we got to figure out what that's going to look like. But after we got back from our Colorado road trip last summer, my like next crazy idea as we were crossing the Mississippi River. And I don't know if have you ever like been around the Mississippi?
I've never.
Um,
I think I've seen it once or twice, but I've never drove across it.
okay. So like the whole area is in like kind of where you cross from Wisconsin into Iowa or Minnesota. To me, it is just so beautiful. There's these beautiful bluffs and like, you look down below and it's just so beautiful. And I'm like, sweetheart, I'm like, I think we should rent a houseboat.
Oh God! And did you get the look of what is wrong with you? A houseboat. Oh,
Possibly. Yeah. I'm like, I think we should rent a houseboat. So we will see at some point before the boys graduate, my little boys, perhaps there will be a trip down the Mississippi in a
in a
houseboat.
houseboat.
So yeah. So I can, ask them all my favorite get to know you questions and do what I did when we went to Colorado and say, "Oh my gosh, look at the beautiful mountains. Oh my gosh, look at the beautiful bluffs. Are you looking? Are you looking?"
Do you see that? Yes.
Do you see this?
And
So,
and
but
next up, the Coffeen family takes a covered wagon and explores the depths of the Oregon Trail.
I'm out. I'm out at the wagon. Out.
Oh,
Covered
come on.
wagon. Oh, but I think what a lot of it is though, Val, and I don't know if you feel this way too, but it's either, trying to bring in the greatest memories you have with your family from being a kid or create the ones that you kind of wish you had. And my family
Yeah,
didn't do that stuff, growing up. Like our summers were all about baling hay and that was our schedule. And the county fair was like the pinnacle of everything. And I want that for my boys too, but I also want them to be able to see things that just really see what a beautiful world we live in, and
yeah,
that there's so much that's out there for them to explore and to learn from, and really just to appreciate the beauty of what God created. And sometimes we just got to get out of our own environment to do those things.
agreed. This is a friendly PSA to those farmers that are listening to this. You can, in fact, take time away from the farm and it will, in fact, still be there when you get back because it's
Yeah.
important to spend that time with your family and it's important to explore off the farm, take a little break, and do the fun things. So
Yeah.
there's my PSA for the day.
I love
Peggy,
that. Yeah.
it was so much fun talking to you today. I am happy that we finally got the chance to sit down and chat. And hopefully, if I make it to Madison, we will, in fact, find each other this coming October, which is very far away, it seems like, but it's going to come fast. So,
Sure
anyways,
will.
just a quick reminder, don't forget to support our sponsor, Supervisor Systems, supervisorsystems.com. Peggy, if people want to follow you in your podcast, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can find Uplevel Dairy on most of the same favorite places they listen to yours. So Apple, Spotify, and also YouTube if you like watching the video. And people can watch video on Spotify now too, which is kind of cool. So
Very
those are the
exciting.
main, yeah. So those are the main platforms where you can find Uplevel Dairy podcast. And actually, probably by the time this goes out, you'll be able to find my new podcast that's coming out.
Excellent. And can they follow
So.
you on social media as well?
Yep, they can follow me there too. But I'll give you a sneak peek of what the new podcast is if you'd like to get the inside.
Sure. What are you doing?
It's a little branch off of Uplevel Dairy, and it's called Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders, and
Very
it's
cool.
for those in the first 5 years of their dairy careers, whether they're producers or professionals. But a lot of the things that I do, Val, are just to create what I wish I would have had for myself, and
Definitely.
that's what this is a space and place for those young professionals to be able to hear stories from others who are like them and learn from some that have been through the challenges that they face in their first 5 years of finding their way. But ultimately, for those that are committed to dairy, not just as a job, but a place where they're really driven to make a difference. And so that will
Awesome.
have its own platform. Uplevel Dairy Young Leaders, but then I'll also drop it every other week as well on Uplevel Dairy. So
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Peggy, for joining me. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, we will talk soon. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and leave a review. You can find me on most social media platforms at Dairy Gal Val or online at dairygalval.com. Thank you so much for coming to the Dairy Hour.